Welcome to What She Does, the podcast that takes you inside the working lives of everyday women shaping the world around us. I'm Leigh Starr.
And I'm Annie Sinzinger. And each week, we sit down with someone who shows us not just what she does, but how and why she does it. Plus, find out if you fit the same mold to grab the same type of gig. Let's discover
What She Does, starting now. So today we're talking to Leigh, who is a ballet teacher, not of kids, but of grown-ups. And she's also a choreographer of very modern ballets. In fact, her zombified segment of Sweet Sorrow won the Gong Show. So I'm introducing our guest, who is Leigh, and she's a ballet instructor and choreographer who, after performing and teaching for 10 years in Boston, Connecticut, and New York, moved to LA. There, she's been teaching all levels of ballet to students and adults since 2007. She's staged over 24 productions, including the Nutcracker, Alice in Wonderland, Coppelia, and Sleeping Beauty. She's also the artistic director and choreographer for the Leigh Ballet Company and created their first full-length ballet, Sweet Sorrow, a zombie ballet. So welcome, Leigh.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And now would be your opportunity to tell me if I said anything wrong.
Well, my last name is pronounced Pirtle. So,
Pirtle.
but a lot of people get that wrong. A lot of people get that wrong. So,
yes,
even people in the company, but that's one of the reasons I think they call it LPBC, so that then you don't have to pronounce it.
Yeah. I know that, and I can't.
Doesn't matter.
So like purr as in cat.
Turtle.
Yeah. I know.
If you have a cat,
I've had people. I had one ballet teacher who, when I introduced myself to him, of course he called me Leigh, and then as soon as he saw my name written, he started calling me Leia, and he never stopped calling me Leia because it's Leigh, and in his mind that was Leia. So, anytime I run into somebody who calls me Leia, I know that's how I know them from that class. So,
oh my God. Oh, so I'm sorry. But so anyhow, we'll start off. We'll just dive right in, and I will ask you if you can think of, and it's like going through your memory of what was like a standout moment in your career that was just memorable or funny or great.
So I don't know if this would be a standout moment for most people, but for me, it was when my company members won the Gong Show in 2017. Yeah, so that was something. I grew up with the Gong Show. It was something that my brother and I, yeah, right? So I had no idea that it was coming back, and they reached out to us. It wasn't something that we said, hey, let's try out for the Gong Show. They reached out to us and liked, I guess it was called, because and you'll see my shirt, it says the Sweet Sorrow Zombie Ballet. I had been doing little bits of like this little bit of choreography that we were calling Zombie Ballet. And it was, classical ballet, but it was, it was like zombies. So, and the beautiful dancers and everything. But it was really very unique. And so we were kind of known as Zombie Ballet. We'd been to, the year before we had been to, Scare LA, which was a horror convention. And we performed there, and that was like really exciting. Everybody loved it. It was like, what the heck is this? We've never been to a horror convention. And I don't think they ever saw ballet dancers at a horror convention. And I think that's how the Gong Show people found us and reached out to us. And we thought it was a joke. We sort of treated it like, hey, whatever, let's just have some fun. And we kept going and it was like, wow, we're on the show and we're filming. And then we won, and it was shocking. And it was, I think the best part of it was it was it was great to win because it's kind of an unusual accomplishment. But that was the year that I was starting the company, and I had in mind, I had already started working on Sweet Sorrow Zombie Ballet as a full-length ballet. And I met Fred Armisen, who was one of the judges, who just loved us. And I met him and thanked him, and he said, "Keep going with this. Do more of this. Keep going with this." And I was like, "Yeah, I am actually," And so it was kind of nice that it was not a validation, like an external validation, but it was like, "Oh, you see what I see," and that was exciting. It's always exciting when other people see what you're doing and are supportive. They understand what it is and what it could be. And that to me was like really gratifying.
And I think he came to one of your shows, right?
He did. He came to one of the shows. It was the show right after the pandemic.
Oh
So
God.
yeah. Yeah, I know. But it was a really good show and he loved it. Loved it. So yeah, it was nice.
So aside from the the ballet dancers being dressed as zombies, what's sort of like the storyline for those who may want to be, interested in seeing it in the future?
Sure. This is actually the full-length ballet is a sequel to Romeo and Juliet. And so it starts with the deaths of with Romeo and Juliet, and it sort of moves on from there. So obviously because Romeo and Juliet are dead, we see them and initially we see them as zombies. And there are a lot of characters who are from the original Shakespeare play. Um, um, Benvolio and Rosalind, and of course the Montagues and Capulets. So we have a lot of that, and it's all classical ballet. It's all classical music. It's not like a mixed genre. So I think that's what people are surprised by, that it actually is classical ballet. But the goal of our company, the mission, is ballet for everyone. And that is not just for the people who are on stage, but also for the audience. So we want the audience to see that ballet can be for them, that even if it's not, it's not all Swan Lake, you might see things in there that you recognize, like zombies or vampires or something like that. And so that's how the company began. And I just expanding that to a full length ballet. And since then we've just done, we do, we keep in mind that mission statement, and our ballets are very broad and diverse in terms of their um, appeal. There's like a science fiction, and there's, we did a time traveling one. We just did a steampunk circus one. So that was a lot of fun. And we've done our own version of Nutcracker, which is also a different story. So, but, taking a lot of elements that people are familiar with.
Great. And I'm also wondering if you can kind of address, you teach adults exclusively, right?
I do. The occasional teenagers who are like, more mature, you know, um, kids who can handle being with adults, you know. So it's mostly to keep the adults comfortable. I know a lot of adults are afraid to be in a class with, especially if they're brand new. They don't, you know, they don't want to be in a class with younger people. So make them, so you want them to be comfortable. So.
What
And
is it you
then
like about ballet? What drew you to ballet? I mean, in particular, it's a genre that I don't know very well. I'm not a dancer, so
Sure. I was typical. I started ballet, tap, and jazz. It's like when I was a little kid, I was like 4 years old. My mother put me into ballet classes, dance classes, and she put my brother in baseball. And so that's what we grew up with. And I gave up the ballet when I gave up ballet, I gave up dance when I was in high school because I was a tennis player. I played on the tennis team. I was a cheerleader. So I was doing a lot of those activities. But then when I went to college, I got back into dance. And but I didn't like ballet. I like once I didn't have to take it, I chose to do, jazz and modern and, different styles. And then when I left college and I wanted to do some teaching, I tried to be a jazz teacher, and the woman that I auditioned for said, "I really like you, but I want you to be my ballet teacher. And if you want a job, you'll teach ballet." And so I had to basically re-educate myself on a genre that I was really not always happy with. But I found as an adult, and even as I got older, how much I enjoyed it, and how much I found that because I think that ballet is something that can be pursued as we age. So it has a lot of health benefits that other forms of exercise don't have. And I think that if more people could understand that, they might value it more and not feel that it's an exclusive art form that they can't be a part of. So um, that that has encouraged me to, and now I mean, I do teach jazz, but I'm primarily known as a ballet instructor. So
All right. Um, I I guess the thing that sort of sticks out to me is uh, teaching dance is it's you're a contract player. You just come in, and what is that like having to go find customers, get people excited, get them into you know the dance troupe?
yeah. Well, when I first started teaching out here in LA, because I've always when I was living in Boston, I taught I didn't do any teaching in New York, but I did teach in Boston. Um, I was hired as a teacher, and I
Mm.
just taught a few classes for that studio. And then when I moved out to LA, that's how it started. I had been working full time, and um, I was transitioning from a full time job to I was writing. I had some books published, so I wanted something with a little bit more. Um, Something that I love doing instead of a day job behind a desk. So I went back into teaching, and at first I was teaching um, all levels of dance to all 8 years old to adult, and then it's sort of as people started to know me more, I was able to pick and choose the classes that I wanted to teach.
Mm.
And then when I was ready, I started teaching at I renting space on my own. So, being rather than working for somebody, my goal was to have my own business. So, now I am the business instead of going someplace else, like wherever I am, that's where the classes are. So, I rent studio space in La Cañada, but I have been in other places. And um, fortunately, am, I don't want to say well known enough because I don't think that's possible in LA, but I do get a lot of people who either Google me and come or they know other people. So I've been fortunate that I've been able to, keep the schedule that I want, teach when I want, and have people who want to be there. And that's exciting. So, and then the ballet company, I think that's something that people have also, that's a remote, as a hybrid company. So I do have dancers on other parts of the country who participate. And I also have students who just dance with me from other parts of the country as well. So I do continue that pandemic era of Zoom classes. I still do that, which I think is also not everybody is still doing Zoom. Um,
Yeah.
but I like it because I'm able to bring ballet to people who are places that don't have ballet. Ballet deserts. So,
Ballet
I was kind of,
deserts.
yeah, I was sort of curious. What's the difference between teaching young kids, I guess, or teenagers to adults? Like what does that look like for, somebody who's interested in maybe going into teaching ballet or dance?
yeah, it's vastly different. One of the reasons that I do enjoy teaching adults is that I can communicate with them as like about the mechanics of ballet, the mechanics of their bodies, and keeping it judgment free. Um, a lot of young people, like whether they're like 8, 10, 12 years old, even some teens, don't have a body awareness yet. And um, so the kinds of things that you're asking them to do, they're not able to do. They're not able to apply corrections or to um, understand about kinesiology. And I teach from a very mechanics based. Um, that's how I teach. Is that because I try to keep it judgment free. I don't want people to say, well, I can't do that. I can't dance because I can't do this, or I can't, it's like, I don't, I want them to find it within themselves. And, not all teenagers are able to, like, not all young people are able to approach dance that way. Um, so, and also like with adults, I think it's very satisfying it's always satisfying to watch a student learn and grow. That's always exciting, no matter what age they are. It's always that's a gift to me. Um, I do think that a lot of teachers, if they do want to do this, they need to ask themselves why. Um, because a lot of teachers that I've known over the years are um they either just give a class and just say, okay, here's the class, and they don't really offer a lot of personal guidance, which I like to do, or they are still in performance mode and they want to like just do it like me and just watch me, and that puts a lot of students off, I know. So, I used to do that when I was young, when I was teaching in, like, my early 20s. I was just like, "Well, just do it like this. I don't know how to tell you. I don't know how to tell you. Just do it like this." You know?
Wow.
It's like, I don't know how I learned. Just watch, you know? So, it took me a long time to learn how to teach properly, and, you want your students to understand that you really, really, really want them to learn. That, and it's kind of like, Leigh, and we've talked about this with writing. It's like you have to ask yourself, why do you want to write? Do you really have to write? Because if you don't. It's not easy. It's not easy. If you say all I want to do is be published, then like that's probably not a good reason because you're just going to get disappointed. So,
But since you
uh,
mentioned writing and you've had other careers, there's other things that you've done before ballet. What was the turning point for you? Why did you say, this is where I'm going? This is what I'm doing. This is what's interesting to me.
well, it all kind of came together for me. I also went to film school. So I have my master's in film production and I was pursuing that for a while. And I thought that's where I wanted to go in terms of storytelling. And then it sort of veered into novels. And I thought that's where I wanted to go with storytelling. And then when I moved into dance and I started creating my own ballets, I started with modifying existing ballets. So if a studio that I was working with was doing Coppelia, I would take a bunch of dances or roles and I would use my adult dancers and I would sort of craft it to fit them and always add a lot of humor and, romance or whatever, the things I enjoy. Um, but I found that once I was able to do that and sort of have my own imprint and then expand it to longer forms, then I realized, oh, no, I really do enjoy this form of storytelling. So it has a lot of elements. It is, my ballets are story based. They're not abstract. Beginning, middle, end. We start everything with character. What's the character? What does the character move like? How do they relate to each other? So we start very much like you would do with like a writing project. And then because there are all the theatrical elements, there's the staging, there's lighting and even video direction because we do a video. Like where are the cameras placed? I realized that a lot of that knowledge that I had comes into these productions. And so then it was sort of like it all kind of came together in a ballet production. Will I move on from there? Maybe there's another way to tell stories, but right now I really do enjoy telling stories this way. So,
And do you have anything that you would say to your younger self? What advice you would give? Maybe not necessarily to you, but to someone like you who wants to follow in your
um,
footsteps.
yeah, I would, I was, I, no shade on my dad, but when I was in college, I had an opportunity that once was getting out of college that I could have taken over a dance studio in the town that we grew up. I grew up where my parents lived. And because it was a friend of mine owned it and she wanted to retire and move and she was ready to sell it to me. And I was really excited about that. My father said, no, don't do that. Go off, see the world, do other things, have other careers. And so I did. And now here I am. And it's, I came back to, I came back to teaching full time in my 40s. So I'm 60 now. So I've been doing it for a while, but I would have said, don't be afraid to start it when you do that. I mean, yes, I did learn a lot since then. I've had a lot of different careers. I've done a lot of different things, traveled across the country, moved across the country and got a lot of experience in other ways that sort of allowed me to build this business, allow me to start the company with a little bit more confidence than I would have as a much younger person. But at the same time, I look at myself and go, I wish I had started this sooner.
Thinking about that idea of starting early, a lot of young people, I think even myself, like looking back on my own, life experience, I would have liked to have started certain things earlier too. Um, what kind of influences, aside from, if you had this advice, what other influences affected your decision making along the way? You clearly talked about your dad kind of putting the kibosh on, your purchasing the studio in the
Yeah.
beginning, like being in your 20s. But like, what other things influenced you to like kind of find this new road that you're on? You know, sort of if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I have always been influenced by my own teachers, and I um I had a teacher in New York. Her name was Sarah Neese. She has since passed, but she was an amazing teacher, and I loved the way she connected to people. And that's what I'm saying when I say that I used to be a terrible teacher and then I became a good one. Um, it's because when I was younger, right out of college, I didn't really know how to teach, even though I had taken pedagogy. I had no idea really how to connect to people. And it was only through having experiences with really, really great adult teachers, treating them like respectfully and learning from that how it's like I would see different I would have classes with different teachers like that is what I want. I want that and I want a little of that and I want a little of that. And so I sort of built up my own the way I teach and the way I communicate with people. I've sort of taken the best from the people that I have had my own experiences with. So on a level of teaching, that is where I what I have, those are my influences. And then, believe it or not, my dad has a huge influence on me because he's a CPA and he's had his own firm since he worked in, did corporate work. And then I think when I was like 15 or 16, he left to start his own business and has been in business ever since. He's very successful. Um, and so I always had him as a role model for, um, being your own, like doing the work that you love in the way that you want to do it. And and so that has kind of guided me as well. Um and my dad is also my dad is a very generous and kind person in terms of like he wants you to be successful. Like he wants his clients to be successful. It's not that he wants to build himself on their success. He wants them to be successful. And that's how I treat my students and my company members is like, I want them to be successful. It's not me. So I think that um, once I found that I don't want to, it sounds so self-serving to say, oh, I'm so selfless. I don't mean it that way. What I mean is that when you don't put yourself, when you find something where you don't put yourself first, where you are truly in service to others, then I think that, I mean, that's just I don't want to say that's what I think people are put on this earth to do, but I think that you can really, like, I see that with, even, like, my dad's a CPA. It doesn't sound like the kind of thing where you'd be in service to others, but he is. That's how he works. And it's what I think of myself as. I'm in service to others. And I think that that is, I think, the most gratifying life that, yes, would I like more money? Sure. But, uh, the, but
Wouldn't we all?
it is, yeah, wouldn't we all? But,
Wouldn't we all? Yeah.
it, I think it definitely, that is what I would, and that gets back to the, thing about if you really, like, what's the reason for you to do this? If you really want to see, like, if you truly, truly want to see other people become their best selves, not, they don't have to be like, Broadway stars or something like that, but be like find their goals and you want to help their goals. So that I think is makes for a really good teacher.
That's true. Um, although I do I feel now there's like a little pressure on us to sing your praises because I think it's pretty spectacular that you have people in your troop who are in their 70s and I think
80s.
80s,
Yep.
yeah,
Wow.
which is kind of crazy. And I think I'm not sure. Does one of them do toe shoes?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
crazy.
Wow, that's
Yeah, I
amazing.
know. And
Yeah.
like, I think that's pretty spectacular, and that you have actually got these people one on toe shoes, and no one's had any horrible injuries yet. I think it's great. Um,
If somebody was interested in getting involved with teaching post their dance career, what would they need to think about or do next?
So if somebody really if you do want to become a ballet instructor, especially whatever ages that you want to do, I would have told myself years ago to consider becoming certified in Cicchetti, or probably not Vaganova, but Cicchetti or RAD or some certification. ABT has a program because I think that as we move forward, you to really give yourself an edge and allow yourself to stand out. You can say, I was certified with this, in this program, because I do think that that can be valuable. And I would have told myself, don't worry so much about other people. You're not in competition with them. You are in competition with yourself, and people come to take class with you because they want to learn from you. It's not necessarily who you used to be on stage or the people that you danced with. That's really not what it's about, especially from an adult point of view. They just want somebody that they will learn from. And if you can be confident and trust yourself, trust your skills as a teacher, as a student yourself, knowing that you're always going to be growing, you're always going to be learning, there's always a new way to approach teaching, that you keep yourself open to all of that. And then your students will know that they're going to be growing with you. And I think I think those are things that I would have told myself.
I think that's a good summary.
That's a great advice.
I do want to wrap it up and say thank you so much for talking to us. We really appreciated it.
Well, the first thing to note is if you are old enough to say, should I become a ballet teacher? You probably have missed your window.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you have to kind of start really early.
Really
I
early.
mean, early, like 5, 6 years old, maybe even 3, 4 years old, to just
Yes.
have the limber body to dance. I mean, it's very taxing.
Yeah. But ironically, if you want to teach, it requires a college degree.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that weird? Like, I would think that it would it would just take a lot of practice dancing, like physical toll on the body, mental stamina, to keep
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. And then, yeah. And, and to, on top of that, have, you know, you'd have to go to school. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
This one asks a lot.
I think from a teaching standpoint, though, I think in any kind of teaching, you probably need a degree
Yeah.
because there are methods in terms of how you teach. So you kind of have to learn that. But the nice thing about, I think, for ballet teaching, they do have accredited programs. You have colleges, universities, ballet schools. You can get a college degree, but you can also get a graduate degree in it.
Yeah.
So it depends on how much you want to learn in order to teach, ultimately.
Yeah. And this is not a job that is going to be replaced by AI.
Oh, yeah, no. I don't know how you could do that. In fact, I think there's opportunity with digital platforms for this job because, like if you think about during COVID, you can't really interact with people. You can't be in front of people, but you can record yourself doing things and teaching people online. So there's not just in a classroom, but it expands the opportunity with digital platforms. So that's kind of a nice thing with technology.
And the pay is better than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I was really surprised. Like the median salary is like about 48K, but honestly, you can make up to $100,000. I mean, it depends on where you're teaching,
Yeah.
honestly. And where meaning like location, because obviously certain cities are more um, expensive than others, but and different levels of teaching too.
Yeah. So who do you think is what's her personality, I should say? Uh, who do you who do you think is right for this?
Well, I think it's somebody who's definitely very empathetic because if you think about dance as a art form, it's creative. It is expression of emotion through physical capabilities. So um, I don't think it matters if you're introverted or extroverted. I think you have both kinds, but I think it's really somebody who can feel and be intuitive about emotion
Mm.
because you want to be able to convey that through movement. So, yeah, it's sort of bringing ideas to life through people, is what I'm thinking.
And if you're lucky, you can get your dancers on the Gong Show.
Yeah, I was like, wow, wow for taking actually in particular, I thought taking a concept of Romeo and Juliet and turning it into zombies really adds like a different creative spin to it, and it's sort of pretty wild, I think.
Okay.
So I think ultimately being able to translate emotion into kind of a physical form is a really wonderful way to communicate. Thanks for joining us today. That's what she does, and maybe what you could do too. If you like what you heard, make sure you follow What She Does wherever you get your podcasts.